So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview, recorded live on blogtalkradio.com on April 4th, 2008. So, that was Robert Schimmel. Robert Schimmel was my guest on Mr. Media about a month ago, and despite an hour of conversation, I felt like we barely began talking when time ran out. And based on listener response, it seems many of you felt the same way. So I've invited Robert back to pick up where we left off. So please welcome back to Mr. Media, one of the best stand-up comedians in America and the author of Cancer on $5 a Day, Robert Schimmel. Robert, welcome back.
Hey. Thanks. It's great to be here.
How are you?
Good.
I had a really good time talking last time, and I appreciate your willingness to come back so soon. I hope I don't cause myself to wear out my welcome or your welcome or something like that.
Yeah, no, I really wouldn't worry about it.
Listen,
I had a lot of fun last time. I mean, that's not rare. You get to do something like we did, and I do a lot of morning radio, and all they want is joke the whole time. And, they barely touched on what I'm talking about. And it's, for morning radio, I guess cancer is a real downer. For me, it was an unbelievable learning experience. And, believe it or not, it's an unbelievable career move. I never thought that would change everything in my life so much, but it did.
It really has made a striking difference, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, my life is a lot better. I think I told you when I talked to you last time that if I could go back and change it and have them say that I didn't have cancer, but in exchange for that, I wouldn't have my 4.5-year-old son Sam, and my 3-year-old Max, and my wife Melissa, who I will be married to 5 years on this coming Tuesday, and the things I know about life, I wouldn't take that deal. I wouldn't go back and undo it. I think that I'm more connected to everything. My life it's an unbelievable experience. I mean, we all have a beginning and an end. Everybody does, and I think the hardest thing is to surrender to the fact that there's some things in life you don't have any control over. And, I had 6 children, and so I really could never afford the luxury of having a substance abuse problem. But and I don't really drink, but I went to a couple of AA meetings because I was looking for some new material. And the Serenity Prayer, I never really, if you don't go to the 12-step meetings, you never really, you don't pay attention to it.
Right.
And when I hear the guys recite it in this thing, I'm thinking, if everybody used that as their motto first thing in the morning, I think your life would be a lot simpler. I really do. I mean, you have to let go of the stuff that you have no control over, know the things that you do have control over, and make the changes that you can make, and live life one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, to get hung up in the what if I would have done this. Well, the minute you start saying that, I think you're living in a time that doesn't exist. You're giving up the moment to go back to a place you can't go back to.
Mm-hmm.
Or you imagine something in the future that hasn't happened yet, and you're going, boy, if I come out of remission and my cancer comes back and, I have to get a stem cell transplant and then that doesn't work. Well, but nobody said any of that happened. So, you got to train yourself not to think like that. I'm not saying I was born that way, because I wasn't.
Well, Robert, how do you walk the line between continuing your career as a stand-up comedian and a very funny stand-up comedian, and talking about the cancer and your experience, and yet not turning into like a self-help guru or almost
Well, I tell the audiences that I never thought that after all the years that I'm doing comedy that I get a book out, and my friends are telling me that they go look for it. They find that in the disease and disorder section. It's pretty bizarre. I'm not a self-help guru. I'm the first to admit that I'm nothing like those guys. I have a lot of respect for a lot of them. I think that, I'm 58 years old. Tony Robbins is a great speaker. I remember Dale Carnegie saying the same thing, exactly. Maybe in a different way, and a bunch of other people, and all these guys basically say the same thing. And it's just a matter of which one connects with you. It's almost like religion, it's some people, it's like God's like in the middle of a bicycle wheel, and all the different spokes on the wheel are different faiths, and they all lead to the same place. It's just which one's going to get you there. And so it's the same thing with that. It's I tell people that this is my story. I don't think cancer is funny, and I don't. I'm not making fun of anything that anybody else has gone through. It's exclusively about my experience and how I found humor in it, and I couldn't help it. That's just, it's either in my DNA or the way I was brought up. I told you before that my parents are Holocaust survivors, and they have a great sense of humor, a great attitude. I asked my dad, how did you survive something like that? And he said, Robert, every morning when I woke up, I just thought maybe today will be the end of the war and I'll go home. And, some people can think like that. Some can't. Some people, you hear cancer and you go, I'm dead. And other people go, okay, so what do I do? Those are important crossroads in your life where you have to make those decisions. And I believe that there's a strong, just because I'm a comedian and I love making people laugh, and I will never stop doing that ever, it doesn't mean that I'm not passionate about my story. I see the reaction that it has on other people. I did a book, so I'm in Pleasanton, California right now, and I did a book signing yesterday, and first they said, we want you to read out of the book, and I said, I don't want to read, and they said, well, most authors do that, you read like 20 minutes. I said, why don't you just read the chapter from when you went into the infusion center for your chemo? And I sat there and I looked at these people and I said, I really don't want to read out of the book. I mean, you're right here. I'd rather talk to you. If you want to read the book, you can read the book. But I want to interact with you. I don't want to recite. And I'm telling them I went through, but not in the same exact words. And people are asking me questions. And when I first started this thing, I never wanted to write a book. I got offered to write this book. I wasn't trying to procure a book deal. I'm friends with Seinfeld and Chris Rock, and all these guys, and Dennis Miller, and I love all of them. They have books out. A lot of their books are basically their stand-up act transcribed into a book. I never really had a desire to do that. First of all, there's some jokes are funny on paper. Some you got to see the guy do on stage. I've typed up my act once to see what it looked like. It's not a fun read. It looks a lot dirtier than it really is, and when you see it in print, it does, seriously. Well, because you got to remember that there's my personality and my stage persona, and I'm self-deprecating, and I'm the victim of everything that happens. I'm the guy that buys a porno movie and brings it home, hoping that my wife will try crazy stuff, and then she's the one saying, "How come you're not like that guy?" And then that kills my whole night.
Right.
So, but on paper, it doesn't look like that. On paper, it just looks like somebody typing something dirty, but it's not. And I have a nightclub act, and that's exactly what it is. It's a nightclub act. But I can talk in front of people for an hour about what I went through, and my parents, and my son, and yesterday I did it. I did it last Wednesday in front of children. I'm not saying anything that I couldn't say in front of a 5-year-old in a Barnes & Noble where the parents wouldn't have to take the kid out of the room. Because I don't want that message. I don't want someone to say, "Gee, my kid's got cancer, but I can't let him read Schimmel's book or go see him at the bookstore. He's going to say something inappropriate."
Right.
And I don't want that. I'm proud of what I do for a living. I'm not ashamed of what I do. But, I got kids too. So there are things that are appropriate for them. There are things that aren't appropriate for them. I have a 3-year-old. I have a 4.5-year-old. I have a son that just turned 9. I let my son see part of my act once. And, after I got done dealing with the principal and my ex-wife, I decided that he's not really old enough to see my show.
Yeah.
Because they asked him, they said, "Your father's a comedian, why don't you tell a joke?" And he told a joke that other 8-year-olds didn't know. And they're probably still worrying about what it meant. And I had to go down to the principal's office and meet my ex-wife down there. And my kid, Jacob, had to repeat the joke in front of the 3 of us. And believe it or not, I was the only one laughing. My wife didn't think it was funny. The principal, no sense of humor. But here's what I wanted.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, here's what I wanted to do. I said, I lost a son to cancer in 1992. I didn't even want to put him in the book. That was my hardest part with the book. This is something that we didn't talk about last time because I remember.
Right.
But I debated whether putting his story in there or not. Why? Well, I wanted to have it in there because I love him. I miss him. He fought an unbelievable fight and all the way to the end. But I wanted people to know that even though I went through that, which is probably something that most people would say is the worst thing they could ever imagine is having your child die, that I still came back and have a life after that. Mm-hmm. I have a wife. I have other children. I have a career. I want to make a difference in other people's lives. My life isn't completely ruined. And, yeah, it's bad. You lose your kid. You lose a sitcom. You get cancer. But, I found out that, you can only go down so far. And when you hit rock bottom, the only place to go from there is up. Mm-hmm. That's it. Unless you got a shovel and you want to start digging. Otherwise, you can go up. And so I didn't want to, let me just finish this one thing.
Sure.
I didn't want to acknowledge that, I wasn't living in a fantasy. But, I know people, they're going to read the book and they're going, they're looking for something that they can use for themselves, something to hold on to or give to somebody else and say, look, here's a book written by a guy that has the same thing you have, and he's 7 years out in remission, has 2 children after treatment when they said no children. And I thought if that made a difference in somebody's life, if somebody heard my story and it gave them the spirit or the strength to get through the next treatment, then what I went through wasn't for nothing, and I get to make a difference in somebody's life. Well, I got an email from somebody saying I made a big difference in their life. And I have to tell you, I was wrong. Making a difference in one person's life isn't enough for me. It has to be bigger than that. I have an unbelievable gift that I got to be here. I know a lot of people that didn't make it, and I got two kids that I'm in love with. I got my son with me, actually. I just had to rent the B movie so I could talk to you, and it's really, it's great that I got to pay to have another comic entertain my kid while I'm doing an interview.
And Jerry needs the money.
Yeah, well, he does, because, when he has his private jet turned into a hybrid, no, I want to make it. I want to make a difference. And my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't have the grades. I thought making people laugh was almost like being a doctor. I can't walk on water. I don't tell people that I can. I'm lucky. I don't say that I had a game plan. My doctors had a game plan, and I do say what their plan was in the book and how they talked to me and the advice they gave me. But did I make it on my own? No. Did I make it just with the doctors? No. With the doctors and the nurses? No. Everybody. It involves people that I don't even know, people that were in clinical trials that I never got to meet, whose mindset was, I might not make it, but maybe they'll learn something with me and that'll help somebody else in the future. Well, I got to cut the cord on two of my kids when they were being born because I was in somebody else's future. And how can you forget that? How could you not want to go on stage and say, hey, you know what? They said I was going to be dead, and I'm here 7 years later, so they don't know everything. They're as human as you are. Don't put them on a pedestal.
Right. Let me ask you something related to that. I don't think I'm giving anything away here, but when you get to the very end of the book, there's a line in small type, and I think you know what I'm talking about, that yeah. I was just shocked. And do you mind if we say what that was? I mean, it's about the doctor. You read through the whole book. One name of one doctor repeats, Dr. Meldau, if that's the way my pronunciation would be, and it turns out it's a compilation of doctors. I was stunned.
Yes. Well,
talk about that.
Here's why I did that. I believe in giving people credit for what they do. I mean, I think we talked about it. Alan Eisenstock helped me write the book. His name is underneath mine. I wanted his name to be the same size as mine. The publisher said, Robert, we don't do that. It's your book. He helped you. So I put his picture on the inside flap because I wanted him to get credit for what he did. The doctors, unfortunately, it's a different deal. One, Mayo Clinic's a little, they're weird. You got to get you have to get permission. You got to get it cleared to use people's names and what they said and the whole thing. I mean, you just do, and it's a long, lengthy process. And I didn't want to use their real names because I didn't want them to get bombarded. And I already know from experience because when I finished chemotherapy and I did Conan O'Brien the first time, I was sitting at a by Jen and said, "You look pretty good for somebody that just went through this treatment." And I said I had a new drug by Genentech. It's a protein that basically attracts only cancer cells like flypaper, and then your own immune system attacks those cells like when you get a liver or kidney transplant and you don't take immune suppressant medication, that you try to reject the donor organ. It's the same thing like that. So I go back to my hotel room that night, and there's a phone call from my oncologist saying, what are you doing to me? And I said, what? And he said, why would you mention that drug on television? And I said, because I'm excited. And you yourself told me that, if it didn't work, I had 6 months. And he said, Robert, that drug isn't approved by the FDA. I gave it to you off-label. You mentioned the drug name and the drug company. Now, Mayo Clinic's asking me if somebody at Genentech told me to tell you to drop the name on the show because their stock went up that week.
Oh, my God.
And then I'm thinking, okay, I could use the real name. But you know what? I put their real names in there, and the phones are going to be running off the hook at Mayo Clinic to talk to these two guys. I cannot do that to them because that's going to interfere with what they're doing over there. I mean, it really is. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not a self-help guru. I can't walk on water, and neither can they. And I don't want to give the impression that these two doctors over there have something that other people don't. It's Sloan Kettering and Cleveland Clinic and all these other places. Because it's not true. That would be a lie. I mean, I'm lucky with who I had, but I'm not saying that I wouldn't have got the same result somewhere else.
Right.
You know, I just had people that took the time with me, but I think part of the reason that they took that time was because I wasn't complaining 24 hours a day. And I did everything I could to entertain these people. I brought every day when I went in for labs or CT scan or PET scan or MRI or bone marrow biopsy or chemotherapy, whatever it was, at Mayo Clinic, every time, starting with the day I was diagnosed, I would stop at Krispy Kreme donuts and I would buy like 3-4 dozen donuts. One would go down to the lab when they drew my blood. One went into the radiology place when I went for my scans. One went up to the oncology floor, and one went into the infusion center. Every time I went. Even today, over 7 years in remission, when I go back for a checkup, Krispy Kreme, on the way there. And you know what? It's not like you're buying something from them by doing it, but you know, they need a pat on the shoulder too. And you know, so the doctors get their reward seeing me on stage doing what I do, and you know, but I was really proactive about what I was going through. I already lost somebody to it, and I saw what happened. And you know, I'm not going to say I wasn't scared. It scared the crap out of me, big time. I mean, you know, you're forced to face your mortality right then.
Well, when I started reading the book, and I was reading, you know, you quoting Dr. Meldau, and you can't see it, but I'm doing the Chris Farley thing with the quote marks with my fingers. I thought at that point, immediately when you started quoting at the beginning of the book, I thought, oh my God, he's actually saying what the doctor said and the response. So, you know, when I got to the end, in some ways, I was relieved that you were not quoting a person directly, because being a writer and doing magazines and books and stuff, I know how powerful the press can be sometimes. So, but I was still surprised. I mean, it just took me completely by surprise to get that last sentence in the book and find out it was compilation. So, yeah. So which doctor came up on stage with you?
What?
Who came up on stage with you then when you went to Vegas that first time at the end?
His name was Ted. His name was Ted Breisch, and he actually is not at Mayo anymore. He's in Portland, Oregon. And yes, I took him on stage with me, and I actually, because I talked about what I went through, he didn't know I was going to bring him up. He's definitely, you know, Mayo guys are not publicity hounds, and they don't go on stage. I brought him up there, and I told the audience, I said, I just want you to know that this guy is responsible for me being here. He's one of the guys. And I gave him a watch for a present. And I said, you know what? Time's the greatest gift you could ever give anybody, because once you give it, you can't take it back. And he's a mountain climber, off-road bicycle, you know, goes on the desert and mountain biking and stuff like that. So I got this watch that has the GPS and all that stuff in it. And he said, nobody ever gave a present. And I said, you know what? Every time you look at the watch, you can remember me. And he still wears it. I don't even have a watch like that. I'd get one for him, but I wouldn't get it for me. But this guy set my mind straight from the get-go. I mean, both of them did. And, you know, I'm glad that, you know, I had two, because I had two different perspectives. You know, one told me that I was in remission, and that remission is a period of uncertainty that's where you're non-symptomatic. But will I ever say you're cured? No. Because I don't know if there's one cancer cell left in your body, and if there's one, that means it's coming back. He said, unless you get killed in a car accident on the way home, then I can say you were cured of cancer. But then I had another oncologist there that said you're cured. And I said, well, the other guy doesn't say cure. He said, that's where I disagree with the other guy. He said, because here's my experience with patients. A lot of people have a hard time smelling the roses when there's a gun pointed at your head. And, you know, if you're out, you should be living your life, not waiting for a magic number day. And it's true. It really is. It's, you know, they were really great with me. They told me that, you know, I went online because I wanted to research what I had. I wanted to be as proactive as I could. I wanted to know what every drug did, what the treatments were, what my options were. Because if you don't do, no one else is doing it for you. And, you know, different hospitals have different protocols for the same thing. So I was saying something to him, and he said, I was telling him about, you know, here's the thing about cancer. Cure rate and survival mean a totally different thing in that world than any other thing. Cured, to me, means it's gone, and that's it. Cured to them is based on 5 years. And survival rate is the same thing. It's like on 5 years, your chances of surviving 5 years is this. Surviving to me means you survived. So my doctor said, what are you, going online looking for bad news? And I said, no. He said, you're looking at the survival rate chart. You see, that's where you're getting the information from that you're talking to me about. I mean, he's not stupid, you know. So I said, okay. He said, why would you look at that? And I said, no, I'm just, you know, curious. I said, I can't help it. It's human nature. What am I going to do? You know, you said 6 months. I'm looking for somebody to disprove you. You know, and he said, at the risk of finding out that somebody else says 3 months. He said, that's the problem. And he said, I don't want you doing that. So he said, let's say that the 49% chance that you have of going 2 years without a reoccurrence is based on like 1,000 people. Out of the 1,000 people, how many of those people's parents are Holocaust survivors? I said, I don't know. How many of them left Europe and moved to the Bronx? Obviously, Auschwitz wasn't enough for my parents. They had to move to the South Bronx.
Right.
Where, you know, so I said, I don't know. How many people were born in New York like you and lived the life that you lived, ate what you ate, smoked if you smoked, didn't smoke if you didn't smoke, drank, whatever? I said, I don't know. And he said, okay, so based on your answers to my questions right now, I would tell you that the only thing you have in common with those other people is cancer, and everything else doesn't mean anything. So why would that number mean anything to you? You're an individual. That number isn't meant for you. That's meant for, it's like an average thing, like a meteorologist saying the chances of rain tomorrow. It's not a law written in stone. There are times they say it's rain tomorrow, and it's 99 degrees and sunny out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they say, hey, throw away your coat and get your bathing suit on because tomorrow it's this. And then there's 10 inches of snow. Same thing with that chart. So I learned early. And I'm just a lucky guy. You know, I could never really, I try to look at things in such a positive way. I mean, I can't help it. That's the way, you know what, here's how the way I am. This is going to sound nuts. I was coming back from a book reading a couple weeks ago. I had an emergency hernia surgery 2 weeks ago today. I wasn't even supposed to go on the road last week. My doctor said, if you go on the road, I'm not your doctor anymore. I said, I have a book signing. He said, I don't care about your book signing. I said, but I have a date in Cleveland on the weekend. He said, I don't care about that either. He said, I care about you. The book signing in the club ain't going to mean anything when you're dead and you're not with your family anymore. And I said, but I can stand on stage and talk. He said, you're not going to be able to take the flight. He said, you're not going to be able to sit for 4 hours, 2 days after surgery. And he said, you're not supposed to anyway. You get blood clots and this whole thing. I said, good. You know what? Just if something happens to me, take my wife out to dinner once. So, you know, what are you talking about? I said, I'm not canceling. How could you cancel a book signing for a book? And you're canceling an event where you wrote a book about how you got through cancer, and you're not showing up for a hernia. It doesn't sound right. It really doesn't.
Yeah, well, no,
the hernia is really painful, and it still hurts now. And not only that, I got really pissed off at my doctor, because when I woke up, he said, you know, you can't lift anything more than a pound, you can't do this, you can't do that. And he said, I put a Teflon patch in there. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, we put a Teflon patch in where the hernia was, because that way, you know, your skin winds up bonding with the patch, and then it can't tear through there anymore. It just finds another place where the patch isn't. But where the patch is, you won't get that. Right. And I said, well, I wish you would have told me. And he said, why? What difference does it make? And I said, well, because I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I know it's They've linked it to solvents and cleaning fluids and all kinds of other stuff. And honestly, I don't even eat off Teflon. I don't have a non-stick pan in my house, and you put one in my crotch.
Wow.
Now my wife's going to have a real good reason not to eat there, because neither of us eat off Teflon.
So what are you going to do? You're going to get that changed out?
If I have to go for another surgery, I don't want to do it. When I go on the road, you know what? I got the greatest thing. A couple of weeks ago, I was on NPR on Fresh Air, and I got an email from a minister that said, I heard you on the radio, and I was so inspired by what you were talking about and so emotionally moved that you are going to be your interview on that show is going to be the topic of my Easter Sunday sermon this Sunday. And he said, I've been doing this for 27 years, and I never dreamt that my Easter sermon would revolve around the life of a Jewish comedian.
Yeah, that is something.
I said, why not? Your religion is based on a Jewish rabbi, so why can't it be a Jewish comic? And he said, did you pray? I went and talked to the guy. He goes, did you pray? He said, yeah. And he said, I prayed to Jesus when I was in the hospital, and I'm Jewish, and I prayed to everybody. Right. And he said, why would you do that? And I said, why? Because I wanted to make sure my bases were covered, and I didn't want to wind up at the pearly gates and have somebody say, boy, did your parents make a big mistake. You're not getting in. Holocaust or no Holocaust. You're not in here, pal. Right. So, it's... I got a ticket coming back from the book reading. I won't take pain medication and drive. I wasn't looking at the speedometer. I have a Honda S2000. It's a little two-seater convertible. I was doing 85 and a 50. I get pulled over. This guy gets out of the car. This guy, he was so tough looking. I'm not kidding. He made the guys from the TV show Cops look like Richard Simmons. This guy, bald like Batista, that had the World Federation Wrestling champion. I mean, this guy, his uniform was ripping at the seams. He was just waiting for any, You know how fast you were going? No. License, registration, proof of insurance. I said, okay. I said, can I tell you something? He said, I don't want to hear it. And I said, I'm not trying to get out of it. He said, did you hear me? I don't want to hear it. He walks back to the car, comes back. Where are you coming from? Diesel Books in Malibu. I was doing a book reading. About what? I show him the book. I tell him my story at the car. He walks away, comes back, has the ticket book out. And I said, wow, cancer's not even going to get me a warning. I'm really getting the ticket. And I've never used it. This is the first time I ever tried to get out of something using that, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you know what? He's like, if you can drive, then you're not that sick. So, And he said, Mr. Schimmel, he said, you know what? You have an important message to deliver. You really do. He said, I'm moved by what you said. He said, so I would rather give you a ticket than write out a 10-page report about how I found you dead and your car flipped over in a ravine because you were speeding. And told me to take it easy, and that's it, and I left. And you know what I did? I wrote the guy a thank you card. How many thank you cards do you think the police get?
Probably fewer than they get donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote him a thank you card and said, you know what? I made promises when I was diagnosed. And 7 years out, sometimes you forget about that stuff. I wasn't thinking about my 3-year-old son and my 4.5-year-old son and my wife and my other children and my own life. And I'm not upset with you, and I'm not mad that you gave me the ticket. And as a matter of fact, I respect you for doing it. I broke the law. You weren't like sitting there to, pick on me. If I would have been doing the speed limit, you wouldn't have pulled me over. So, I appreciate what you did for me, and that's it. And I talked to a cop in Calabasas where I live. I said, is this guy going to have my phone tapped and all this stuff thinking I'm a maniac? He said, no. He said, you know what it's going to do? He said, that letter's going to go into the guy's personnel file. And he said, that's a good thing for him. And you know what? Maybe by him reading that thank you card, that'll make him remember why he became a cop in the first place, because he didn't go to the police academy to sit on on Malibu Creek Canyon and pull people over for going 85 and 50.
Right.
And so, you know what? I know it sounds nuts to do that kind of stuff. It takes 5 minutes. That guy's going to read that when I'm sure he would expect to open the card and just see 2 words there. And it's, you know. But you know what? That's too easy to do it that way. And it's not even fair to the police. Seriously. You know what? You hear a noise that's on your backyard. You want those guys to take a bullet for you in 2 seconds. You want them there. But you see the lights on behind you, and then all of a sudden they're the bad guy. Well, they're not the bad guy. They don't pull you over for nothing. So I just think that, you know, that's it. I met a guy last night at a book signing. He was 71 years old. He had what I had 19 years ago. And I just wrote him a thank you card that I'm giving to the bookstore because he goes in there all the time, because he really got me jazzed before I even talked. He's 12 years ahead of me, and you have no idea what that means to me when I hear it. You know, I say 7 years, and people go, wow. I hear 19, and I'm like, geez. You know what I can do? You know what I could do if I have 12 more years? I could really do a balls-out effort in making a major difference in people's lives. And, you know, my agent said, you know, I just don't want you to sound like Jerry Lewis at the end of the telethon. And I said, you know what? I like Jerry Lewis, and you might not like what he does at the end of the telethon, but ask the parents of the kids that have muscular dystrophy if they think he's a hack, because nobody else is raising money for them. Mm-hmm. And he does it every year without fail. I mean, no matter how he's feeling, as sick as he was, as bloated or swollen from prednisone as he was, and spinal surgery and all that, he's still there. He doesn't need to be doing that. It's not a career thing.
The last time we spoke, you talked about. I know. Yes, I was just going to say. I know we talked about your meeting with Jerry, and
I know. That's the only thing he would talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was up all night trying to pick out what I was going to wear the next day. It was. You know, life is really beautiful. It is. It just is. I mean, you know, for me to watch this guy as a kid and be rolling on the floor, and for him to know who I was,
right?
I mean, that is like that's in my wildest imagination. I never, ever dreamt that, you know, I wouldn't know, you know, so, and I got that. If I never see him again, I had that, and that's more than I ever dreamt I would have. Mm-hmm. But I get those moments all the time, and you know what the thing is that you just have to stop and look for a second, and you'll find that stuff every single day. You know, I went to Billy Crystal when he won an ACE Award and to congratulate him, and I said, you probably don't know who I am. And he said, I don't know who you are. And he put his hand up to his ear like he was on the phone, and he said, you got your dick out? You ready to jerk off? Your mom wants to talk to you. He quoted one of my bits. That was like an unbelievable compliment to me. I mean, he not that he knew my name or recognized my face, he told me one of my own jokes. And he gave me a quote for the book. I mean, it's, you know, how can I be upset? How can I be negative or complain about anything? Seriously.
And let me quote from that line. What Billy Crystal said on the book was, Robert Schimmel always made me laugh. Now he makes me laugh and cry at the same time. Cancer on $5 a day is a true testament to laughter and the power of the creative spirit. I just happen to have that handy.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that he would do that.
Well, Robert, let me give out our phone number, and then I want to change gears a little bit with you. I know we've got people listening. Sometimes they just like to listen, but sometimes maybe they want to call in. We'll go either way on this. Folks, if you'd like to ask a question of Robert directly, 646-595-3135. Only if you're listening live on April 4th. I wanted to ask you, when we finished the conversation, and I think it was almost a month ago to the day, you were telling me, I think the last thing we talked about was you were telling me the story of how Steve Martin in some ways discovered you, that you were installing stereo at his house, I think in Vegas. And
it was in Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, I'm sorry. And
yeah, I was working at a stereo place.
Yeah, and you had said to him, well, I'm a comedian too, and, of course. And what I wondered is, rather than, I don't want to make you go through that again, but I am kind of wondering, who else was, influential that early in your career? Were there other comics that helped you along the way? And
Rodney.
Right, I remember talking about Rodney, yeah.
Red Fox.
Red Fox. What about Red Fox? Where does he fit in?
Red Fox put me on a show called, it was a thing for cable. It was called Dirty, Dirty Jokes. And it was me, Andrew Dice Clay, Dom Rivera, Ronaldo Ray, a bunch of guys like that. That was before Rodney, but that thing didn't. Getting picked on a young comedian special by Rodney was the contemporary equivalent of Johnny Carson asking you to come to panel. That means you made it, as far as that guy's concerned. If Carson said, come here and sit down, you knew that your agent was going to get phone calls like all day the next day. Today, it doesn't mean that. I think you can go out there and get a standing ovation. Whoa, what was that?
I was going to ask you.
I'm in a hotel room. It just sounded like a drill into the wall.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you hear that? That was loud.
I did. No, I did hear that. That was, yeah. Well, I'm just glad you can't hear what's going on outside of my walls. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, and the Grand Prix started here today, so I just keep hoping that sound will not penetrate the walls. Today. Now you have a pretty good relationship with Howard Stern. I wondered who else currently. I mean, are you where have you?
I am working on I've been approached to do like some kind of a sitcom hybrid, some kind of show that's the sitcom and part reality and whatever based on my life, because they're people that just like the story, and they're working on it right now. I was going to do something with Howard, and just when it was going to get greenlit, the guy that lights the thing green got fired. He had a lot of other stuff that he was working on, and we had to find somebody else to write it. And, it might have been hard doing it with Howard. I mean, he's done a lot for me. But he wants a lot of control. And, he wants more, I think, than the networks want to give. God, it's horrible. It's Seinfeld you're hearing in the background screaming as a bee.
That's a bee.
Yeah.
Well,
my son's 4.5. I can't really have Lenny Bruce time with him.
Do you really want to go? Now you talk in the book, and you spoke to me, and I know you talked about other places. And the sense I had was that you really were looking forward to doing that the sitcom Schimmel for Fox years ago. And I guess in retrospect, you still do want to do a sitcom. That is.
It would. The advantage of doing a sitcom is that you're exposed to a lot of people at once, and I don't want to. I love comedians. I don't really have anything bad to say about comics, but I'm sure you know that there are guys that wind up making it on a sitcom, and they were making like maybe $1,000 a week doing stand-up. Then they're on a sitcom, and then they go out, and then they don't go back to the club anymore. Now they're doing a theater because they're the star of a TV show.
Right.
And then you're paying $50 to see a guy that you used to pay $15 for. And he's doing the same exact act that you paid $15 for. And he's getting $35 more because here's a television show. But it's the same act. And, for me, if I had to choose, my agent wouldn't like this, but if I had to choose between having a sitcom like Everyone Loves Raymond, but that I had to give up stand-up. You can't have both. And I would pass on the show. I really love what I'm doing. I can't see not doing that. I can't see it. I mean, to me, that would be like somebody saying, if I give you X amount of dollars, you promise to never tell a joke again for the rest of your life. I couldn't take that deal.
You're probably mature enough and old enough that you'd find a way to strike a balance between the two.
Well, I'm striking a balance now between the two, between my act and my nightclub act and the message that I'm trying to give other people. And the I don't like to see. I like to look at the glass half full. The only downside, and I mean, that I can see about doing the kind of material that I'm known for is that I got a funny feeling that if I wasn't known for that, I could probably be the national spokesperson for the Leukemia Lymphoma Foundation.
Mm.
But because, I talk about what you talk about,
right,
they're not going to have somebody like me as the spokesperson. That's all they got to do is start getting emails going, I saw Robert Schimmel at this place. There's something about him and a donkey that I'm losing sleep over it. And that's going to be the end of me being the spokesperson.
Yeah,
and they won't care that I'm a survivor and that I'm inspirational. And see, the thing is that I could work completely clean if I wanted to. I like doing what I do. But when I do all these other things, I'm completely, like the bookstores, the signings, I could do it in front of children. But part of my message is, that's who I am. Take it or leave it. That's who I am. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea when it comes to the live show. I get it. You can't make everybody happy. That's when you get in trouble. You can't. But I'm not ashamed of what I do. And, if I came back here's the one thing I didn't want. I didn't want to start hearing, do you remember when Schimmel was funny before he got sick? I didn't want to hear that because that gives cancer too much power. That means it could touch who I was, and it can't. It can't take away who I am. It can't touch my sense of humor or my spirit. And the fact that I still do what I do is living proof that I'm still me. I went through all that stuff. I lost a son. I lost a sitcom. I did all that stuff. And when I walk on stage, you're getting Robert Schimmel up there. You're not getting a compromised thing. The only difference is, at the end of the show, I tell them about what I went through and how precious life is and not to take it lightly. And it's not a lecture. It's about how much I appreciate being here and them being at my show, and there's other things they could be doing. Everybody only gets 24 hours a day. It's a compliment when somebody comes to see you. And I want people to, I tell them about prevention and early detection and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with causing, public awareness about cancer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The problem with lymphoma is that we get lost. Not lost really in a bad place, but there's National Lymphoma Week. We get a week. It's right in between the breast cancer month. So being right in the middle of that's not a bad place to be, but physically. But there's a lot more people walking around with pink ribbons than they are with whatever it is for leukemia or lymphoma, and that's because I guess there's just a higher value on tits. So,
well, I can't argue with that.
It's true.
I don't think
you know what you don't hear that much about prostate cancer as you do about breast cancer. And I don't think breast cancer is funny. And my mom's a 19-year survivor. But when you really think about it, I mean, that you hear about that. Stores are selling perfume, and a certain amount of this goes to that. Everything has the pink ribbon on it for a whole month. And every other cancer gets lost for 4 weeks. If there was dick cancer, it wouldn't get a month. No, I'm serious.
I know you're serious, but I'm laughing at how true it is. I mean, it's the same reason you you have no trouble seeing a preponderance of breasts, but you'll never see pictures in the general media.
Well, I know. It's a weird world we live in. You know, when Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, you know, had that accidental thing that they rehearsed.
Right.
There's no way that anybody's going to convince me that's an accident. You know, I've been doing this for too long. You have a live rehearsal in the daytime. The cameras have to know where they're going to be and where you're going to be. Otherwise, they can't call the shots from the truck. Mm-hmm. You know, they knew that was going to happen. But when that happened, that was a big downfall for radio.
Everything, you know.
It was after that when I did Stern, that you had to sign a disclaimer before you went on, saying that you were indemnifying him and the sponsors and K-Rock. If you said anything that brought a lawsuit, it would be on you, not on them. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting at the dinner table with my kids, and my daughter said, "How come that caused my 17-year-old?" Said, but she wasn't 17, so she's 17 now. So whenever that was. How come her nipple pops out at the Super Bowl and everybody gets in trouble, but Madonna and Britney Spears were making out on the MTV Music Awards and they didn't get in trouble for that? And my older daughter said, well, that's easy, because that's every guy's fantasy. And I said, you know what? Go to your room, will you, and leave her alone. Why does she need to hear that when she's a teenager? And it's true, though.
It is.
But it is. It's true. You can rent an adult movie. Rent? Where? You can watch an adult movie, and there will be scenes with two girls together, and that's in a straight movie. Two guys, you got to rent the gay movie to see that.
Yeah.
Now, why is that straight and the other thing isn't? It doesn't make sense to me. It just really doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing. I mean, it is the same thing, but society says it's not.
Right.
And by the way, Brad Pitt saying, or Angelina Jolie, that, you know, we're not going to get married until it's legal for gays to get married. Brad Pitt's a fucking genius, I'm telling you. I've heard ways of getting out of getting married before, but that is unbelievable. I'll get married when gays can legally get married. Well, goodbye, everybody. That's the end of that.
Oh, I wish I had thought of that.
The reason is what? What?
Oh, man. I'm coming up on 20 years. I wish I had thought of that one. No, honey, just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, honey, listen, I'm going to. As soon as hunger and poverty are gone in the world.
You know,
but until then, we can live together and still do all the stuff that married people do, just without the legal paper.
Right. Right.
You know, what?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Brad Pitt's one of those guys. My wife, you know, everybody, I don't know what happens. You move to Hollywood, and then everybody I meet has this thing. Oh, I have to deal with my wife. Everybody has this celebrity deal. Like, if you could have sex with this celebrity, then that you have a free pass to do it. Right. You know? And it's amazing, because women set their standards a lot higher than guys do. You know, my wife would say, you know what, if I had a chance to be with Brad Pitt for one night, I would do it. She said, and then now you get to pick somebody. Well, I'm happy with the cashier at the Albertsons.
Right. Yep.
She's pretty hot. You know, to me, she's a celebrity. She might not be in movies or anything, but I'm not looking to go to a movie theater to look at her. So it really, that's a big difference. I do it with Brad Pitt. That's nice. Why didn't you tell me that right before we got married? Because that might have changed things. First of all, Brad Pitt's not Jewish, and my parents would go absolutely nuts to find out that my wife is going out with a Gentile guy. So, yeah, my mother wanted me to marry a Hungarian girl. My parents are Hungarian. Go to Hungary and meet a girl there. They'll cook for you. They don't even know what a microwave is. And my dad took me for a walk, and he said, your mom's losing her mind. They don't know what a microwave is. He said, you're going to bring a girl over here from Hungary, and in 3 days she's going to know what Nordstrom's is, and you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah. It'll be an overnight change. It won't be a gradual thing. I want to ask you, when we spoke last, we talked very briefly about Jackie Vernon, who I gather was a hero of yours.
Big time. I was in love with him.
Yeah, tell me more about the significance of Jackie Vernon, either to you personally or to your career, or where does he fit in?
The thing I liked about him is Jackie Vernon, who in some ways was like in the same demographic as Rodney, but was a little more self-deprecating, and Jackie Vernon to me was like underdog. And how could you not root for this guy? And I just thought that he was so good because he had absolutely zero energy on stage. He would walk out there and just stand in one spot and go, hello, thrill seekers. And the place would just go, no, I mean, he just was just on, like he was on like some kind of medication that just slowed you down. And I never missed him on TV. I loved him. I really did. He made me laugh. There was something about him and what he said. And one of the reasons why he didn't get bigger than he was is he didn't write a lot of his own material. And the guy that wrote most of his stuff that was really great got killed in a car accident. And ever since then, he just never had that, never found a writer like that again. Me, I've never bought jokes from anybody. I've written for other people. I can't do somebody else's joke. It doesn't say, because then it's like it's not really coming from me. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with television. You know, I admire Jay Leno tremendously. I remember when he started, and I remember when he used to be on Letterman. Right. I'd go to panel, and he would do things at panel that he was so convincing that it was off the cuff right then at that moment, and it's stuff that I saw him do at the Improv 6 months ago. And he's doing it like that night, and he's like genius. And, you know, he really was. When he does stand-up, he's great. When you're on the Tonight Show, you got all these guys writing jokes for you, like Letterman. You know, Letterman's reading jokes off a cue card. Leno would get on stage and talk about stuff in his real life and stuff that he was passionate about or upset about, and you believed it. Whether he was making it up or not, he was a pretty good salesman.
I was just going to say, he sold it. He always sold it well, especially on Letterman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so bizarre that Letterman is the one that really gave him the most exposure that he ever got. And those are the two guys that aren't talking to each other.
Right. Yeah, he wound up screwing the guy over. Hey, well, let me ask you about books again, because
sibling rivalry.
Well, that's part of it, no doubt, and they go back. But you mentioned that you wouldn't want to write a book that was just
my act transcribed.
Right. You wouldn't want to put your act in, and I was thinking about that. But did you see Steve Martin's latest book?
Yes.
Born Standing Up. Now that. I was fascinated with that because he really went in a different direction with that. He took that period of his life where he was bigger than life and really kind of took you behind the scenes of it. And I'm reading it, and he's mentioning lines, I'm small, stuff like that. But then he's telling you the story behind it, and I thought, now this makes for a great reading, and this is not just repeating the act. And I wondered if, that period of time...
No, it is. You know what? I would, now that we're talking about Jackie Vernon and Rodney and stuff like that, yes, you know what? I think it would be, but I don't know what the market is. Not that I would do it for money, but maybe for posterity. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of great stories that I have about Rodney and Jackie Vernon and Richard Pryor and Sam Kinison and Bill Hicks and Billy Crystal and Jerry Lewis. I mean, all these things. I mean, a whole career full of stories that would fill 2 or 3 books. That would be funny. They would know more about these people. But other than comedians, who would really jump out to buy a book about stories from about other comedians, about most of them that aren't even alive anymore? I mean, don't know. People, it's a different world that we live in now. I meet I don't know if I told you this last time, but I literally am on the road sometimes and have an opening act that they don't even really know who Lenny Bruce was. It's unreal. And not that he's my hero or that he set the bar. It's nothing like that. But he is a part of comedy history, and to be a comedian and not know anything about him is just totally insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy went to jail for stuff that other comics take for granted. I mean, he was getting popped. His career got ruined because he just wouldn't change. And, you know, today, it's almost like me talking about thanking the people within the clinical trials that I didn't get to meet. And here I am, you know, 7 years in remission with 2 children that I wasn't supposed to have because I was in somebody else's future. Well, it's the same thing. When they were dragging him around for cursing and whatever it was, saying that it basically was pornography on stage and all of that, he's the one that knocked the doors down, and Richard Pryor and guys like that to give somebody like Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay the red carpet to walk right into that world. Andrew Dice Clay never got busted for saying anything like that, and neither did Kinison.
Right.
I mean, Kinison actually was so upset at this club once in Texas, in Houston, that he put himself on a crucifix on the side of the road and stayed up there all day. I mean, if you did that in the day of Lenny Bruce, I don't think probably would have got the crap beat out of you and arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lenny Bruce it's not a matter of being dirty or using the F-bomb or whatever it is there. He was talking about stuff in real life that you just didn't talk about. And I'm not even talking about sex. When you have a guy saying that you're watching the videotape of Jackie Kennedy climbing out of the back of the car when her husband's head's blown off, and that she said that she was going to get the piece of the head that fell off, and he said that she's full of shit and she was trying to save her own ass, and that if my kid was her, I'd want her to get out of the car and get away. You can't say you couldn't say stuff like that about the Kennedys then. You might as well have said, you know what? Harvey Oswald beat me to the punch because I was going to do that. I mean, you might as well go that far at that point. He was in trouble. You mess with them, and then, you know, I mean, it's just like, you know, why don't you dedicate a show one day to just tearing apart the Scientologists and see how long you stay on the air? All of a sudden, you're going to get audited by the IRS, and you're going to be out of show business in 2 seconds. Certain people you don't mess with. You know, I mean, it's insane. This is going on stage, you know, 20 years ago and telling John Gotti jokes. I mean, you could tell one, and then it's goodbye. Wasn't it Jackie Mason that got punched in the... Was it Jackie Mason or... I'm trying to think who got beat up because they said something on stage. In the car, they got hit, like either got their jaw broke. It was either Mason or... I'm trying to think who the other comic could have been. But it was because of John Gotti.
Yeah. No, I think
you can't do that kind of stuff. Before The Sopranos, long before The Sopranos, I went and pitched the show to HBO with my manager, who almost passed out in there, and because they wanted to do something with me, and I said, I have a great idea for a show. It's called Famous Fags in the Mafia. And the guy said, I don't want to hear anymore. And I said, wait a minute. And he said, and my manager's like, Bob, let's go. Time's up. I said, it's funny. He said, no, it's not. I said, get out of here. Are you serious? If you looked at the cable guide and it said that at 10 o'clock Famous Fags in the Mafia were on, you're not going to watch? You're not going to tune in to see what it is, really? And the guy at HBO said, not happening here. Nobody wanted to do that kind of thing. And then here you go. You see isn't that bizarre that you could wind up like falling in love with Tony Soprano and the guy's killer? Seriously. Right. Seriously. It's unreal. It's the sympathetic mafia guy. It's unbelievable. I mean, you know, and I think it's because of the therapy sessions. It shows a side of humanity in him that, you know, they never showed before with you know, organized crime guys. you know, they didn't really, I don't remember seeing any movies with Joe Valachi in any support group meetings.
It shows you how important good writing is, though. I mean, you know, that show would have never flown without good writing. And the other one I'm thinking of is Weeds, which I didn't watch for a year or two because I don't smoke dope, and I just thought, why would I be interested? And then I caught it once, and I thought, oh my God, it actually is incredibly clever.
Yeah.
But I would have never thought that, you know.
No, me neither. And I liked Oz too, and
yeah,
you know, I think that was revolutionary on television. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, they showed stuff in there. When they said, do you want a spoon? And the guy pulls out a real spoon. I mean, it's like, do you want to turn the channel now? I mean, it's very rare that happens on television. It's, but that's the way it is. I think it's how people perceive you. I think we talked about Andrew last time about that. You know, I was one of the first people to defend him. I think he's a really great guy. People, it's unfortunate that with comedians, they think. I know you are. You are a good boy. Hold on one second.
It's okay.
No, this is the first time I brought my son with me on the road.
When you call me your dad, then I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay. You have to go now?
Yes. So I'll be you.
Okay, go ahead. You go. No.
Okay.
I was talking in the bathroom, and he said, I'm being a good boy and not bothering you. And I didn't say don't bother me. But he said, I have to go to the bathroom when you're done. So I said, well, then you can go now. I was talking in the bathroom because out here
B-movie.
is Jerry Seinfeld.
So should I ask if you have a Seinfeld story since we've been telling tales on other
Yes. I auditioned for the part that Jason Alexander got.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you're kidding me, right?
No, I'm not kidding. No, I'm not kidding. And that was it was a part of my career before cancer when I was I wouldn't say self-destructive, but okay, go buddy. Not self-destructive, but okay, that noise in the background is the toilet that my son just flushed. It's either that or Seinfeld. So I got called. It's not self-destructive. Here's what it is. If I think I had this thing where earlier on in my career, if I thought I was going to fail at something, I would rather be in control of a failure than somebody else. Mm-hmm. You go in for an audition and it's like going into surgery. You know, you're putting your life in somebody's hands. And it's the same thing with that. So I get called to read for this thing. And I go there and I'm sitting on the couch. And this guy comes over to me, and there's a lot of people waiting in there to read. And this guy said, what part are you reading for? And I told him, and he said, so what do you think of the script? And I said, well, you know, Jerry's a funny guy, and I've known him for a long time, but whoever wrote this, they don't know dick about sitcoms. This is stupid. Well, it was Larry David I was talking to.
Oh, man.
So then when I get called to go in and read, I walk into the room, and there's Jerry, Larry David, and George Shapiro, their manager. And I said, I don't have to bother reading, do I? And they all looked at me like, nope. And then I ran into Jason Alexander once in New York, and he said, hey, Schimmel, I'm living your life.
Oh, man. I'm really glad I asked. That was good.
I've done that a few times.
Wow.
I went once to, I got asked to audition for something, and it was the biggest casting director in Hollywood, this lady, and I'm intimidated by those kind of things, or I was. You know, being on stage is my turf, going into somebody's office and auditioning is, you know, I feel like a fish out of water, and I would rather, you know, I want to make them laugh, so at least I feel like I'm accepted by them, and then I would be, you know, more comfortable with the reading. So this lady says, tell me something about Robert Schimmel. And I said, well, I'm 40 years old, I'm married, I have 2 children, and I'm a latent homosexual. And she didn't really find any humor in that. And she said, I don't think you're right for the part. And I said, I'm not right for the part because I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. Still no laughs.
Now you got to make her laugh, right?
Yeah. Or try. So then she said, I'm really not comfortable with this. I said, well, how comfortable do you think I am with it? I have to live like a phony life and wait for my wife and kids to fall asleep so I could sneak out and do some guy behind a trash dumpster. Well, this lady went nuts. I mean, no sense of humor whatsoever. Telling me to get out of there. And, I get to the door, and I stopped, and I turned around and looked at her, and I said, you know what, I owe you an apology. And, I'm intimidated being in here. I'm being totally honest with you. You're scaring the crap out of me, and I figured if I made you laugh, the minute I saw you smile or laugh, that would have, let me off the hook, and then I could have read for the thing, and it was a bad choice in material, and, that's not your cup of tea, what I was doing, and, I really do want to read for it. So they gave me the script, and they said, we'll call you in a few minutes. Well, by then, I didn't care anymore. I mean, that's it for me. So they call me back in. I sit down. They go, you're going to be reading the part of John. She said, so how do you see John? I said, well, John's a latent homosexual. And I don't know if you saw that movie Scanners, but there were veins popping out in this lady's head like she was going to have a major stroke. And yeah, oh, I wish my agent was laughing the way you were.
Well.
So anyway, she says, get out of here, and that's it. So I get to the door, and I said, look, I didn't even want to read for this thing, but my agent keeps sending me out on these auditions because I think he's hot for me, and, if I get the part, I'm going to reciprocate. And, I went to the president of my agency, who was Marty Klein at APA. He's not around anymore. And I said I wanted to tell him, but I went into his office, and he was in his pajamas wrestling with this agent, so how am I going to tell him that? And then I walk out. Well, I had never been called by the president of the agency before. I mean, this is I'm a young fledgling duckling comic or whatever it is. I'm just starting out, and, all of a sudden I get this call. As soon as you can get over here to the agency, I go over there. I'm sitting in the conference room. The president's sitting at the end of the table, the vice president next to him, and they had the head of every department, personal appearances, commercials, film, TV, literary, everything at this table, and I'm standing at the other end. And this guy goes, did you tell this lady that I was having a homosexual fling with someone in the film department? And I said, no. I said it was the TV department. Nobody laughed. They wouldn't even look at me.
Oh, my God.
He said, have you ever seen me in my pajamas? I said, not yet. Nobody's laughing. I mean, it's so serious. It's unreal. Do you sneak out at night when your wife and kids fall asleep and have sex with men behind trash dumpsters? No. No. Well, why would you tell the lady that you do that? I said, well, I was trying to break the ice. She said, well, you broke it. You broke it and you fell in because she never wants to see you again. And I don't know what I can do for your career if you're going to sabotage yourself like this. Well, that night was a big industry showcase. And I went on stage and I opened with the story that I just told you, and I named the lady's name in the place. She was there.
Oh, my God.
I didn't know. She was there, and my agent was there. And that was really something. That was something.
Was he still your agent the next day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Barry Diller resigned from Fox?
Yeah.
He was he's a big guy. He's big. Well, they had this big industry thing. Letterman and everybody was there. Just this giant thing. All the studios, networks, everybody's this place. And it was the day that he announced his retirement from Fox. And I go up on stage, and the first thing I said was, my timing is so off in this business. I blew Barry Diller last night. Well, here's the kicker. I don't know about his private life, and I must have been dancing somewhere close because people went nuts. And my manager said, you know what? I'm not even going to my office tomorrow because there's just going to be letters from a lawyer there, and we're both out of show business.
Wow.
He said if he wants to, he could make sure you don't get hired at a Burger King in California. Why would you say that? And I said, say what? And he said, what you said. And I said, well, it's a joke. And he said, it's not funny. I said, but I said I did it to him. I didn't say he did anything. He said, why blow anybody? What are you talking about? He said, you're lucky that this guy retired from Fox because that's where you have your sitcom deal, and that would have been it today.
Really? Wow.
And I said, well, that's really sad that, I'm in the comedy world, and that somebody that's, supposed to have a sense of humor and, makes money on The Simpsons, which is basically a cash machine for Fox, if they don't have a sense of humor. So, but I was wrong to do that. It was, that wasn't going to get me anywhere. And, those are the days when, every comic goes through a period in their time where you play to other comics and not the audience, and it's a crime. You really should never do that. It's the audience that you're playing to. And I don't know why comics even give a crap what other comics think of you, but we do. And, so the room could be packed and you're playing to the two guys that are in the back of the room waiting to go on after you, and you'll do outrageous stuff just to see their knees buckle. But it's way too much for the regular audience. But then you have to understand that for comedians, that's a curse for us. We know how jokes work. It takes a lot more to make us laugh than it does a regular person. It would be just like David Copperfield doing a trick and you going, oh, my God, and having Penn and Teller sitting with you going, oh, I'll tell you how he does that. See, when he moved that thing to the left and this thing, it's not, to them, it's not magic.
Right.
The same thing with comedy. It's not magic when you know how the joke's going to... I've been in a club where somebody's telling jokes. The crowd is screaming, and I'm like, yeah, I can see how that could be funny. But not like the way the audience sees it.
Right. Is there an important distinction in what you do between telling jokes and telling stories that are funny?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think I'm really telling stories.
Yeah.
There are jokes in the stories, but they're not... I don't like doing joke, because then there's nothing to connect. Unless you have a common thread to connect it all, I don't know what.
Rodney or, who's the guy with he had the violin, I'm going blank.
Henny Youngman.
Those guys, boom, 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 boom. It was a different type of entertainment. You tell a story, and then one story leads into the next story and the next, but... And it
all ties together. And the thing is that actually the way that the comedy evolves, it should be the other way around. It should have been stories first and now joke. Because the way things are for most people today, your attention span isn't that long. So really, you have a better shot with joke. Take my wife, please. There's a lot of robberies in my neighborhood. I left my TV on, I left the radio on, I left the lights on, I left a note on the door that said we're inside, and then I came home and everything was missing, and there was a note on the table saying we looked all over for you. That kind of stuff.
Right.
Rodney. I was making love with my wife one night, and it wasn't any good for me, it was no good for her, and I said, what's the matter, you can't think of anybody either? That's it. That's the whole thing contained right there, and it's not connected to anything else.
Right.
I had that kind of stuff on my HBO special, but you know what? Telling a story, they know who you are. And you don't have to, kill every 15 seconds. I've done it, and I'm not saying it to brag, but I've gone out and gone balls out, like right out of the gate. And, 20 minutes later, they can't laugh that hard anymore. They just can't, not for any comic. You'll burn them out before half your act is up, and then you're going to hit a lull. It'll happen to anybody. Yet that's the one thing, is when they say you got to learn timing, it's not just the timing of the joke. It's the timing of the jokes, how you got to let a joke come up like a wave in the ocean, and when it peaks and starts coming down, that's when you start the next one and take them back up so that it never goes down all the way. but it's like a ride, like a roller coaster ride. You cannot go up and just like in a rocket and just go up, 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 up. It's going to stop somewhere. They will run out of steam before you do, and you'll wind up wasting some really good jokes because they're already either they're laughing through what you're saying or they're too laughed out already. And you might say, "Boy, that's a real problem I'd love to have." It isn't. It really isn't. It's not good. It's not good when you're knocking them out of the park and then you look at the watch and you go 40 minutes to go. You're dead meat. You can't. They can't stay like that. Even if you could, they couldn't. I mean, that means you got to constantly top yourself from one to the. Your act's supposed to build. I mean, I used to come out. I mean, if I was going to equate myself to like a boxer, I would say I was like Mike Tyson. I didn't dance around like Sugar Ray Leonard and what's his name, the Mexican guy, Oscar De La Hoya, where they're not, they fight for the last 15 seconds of the round and make it look like they're actually in there. Me, I was like Tyson. I come out of bell rings and I go for the knockout right away.
Right.
And it worked. I knocked people out right away. Unfortunately, the round is an hour long. I mean, I'm knocking the audience out in 5 seconds.
Can what you do be taught? Does it have to be someone gets it, absorbs it, and adapts it, or can it be taught?
I don't know if it can be. I think it's something that I think that if you're writing your own material and it comes from you, I don't know if you could teach somebody how to do that because it has to come from you, and it's the thing that makes you different than everybody else. That makes it what it is. I don't know if you could teach that. Can you teach timing? No, because I think everybody else's is different. I mean, Seinfeld's timing on his jokes are totally different than Larry Miller. But I love Seinfeld. I mean, he's got some jokes. I remember listening to him when I was in the hospital getting chemotherapy. He really made me laugh out loud. I mean, out loud. So does Larry Miller. Larry Miller's nothing like Seinfeld. There's a lot of guys, and their timing is all different. Some guy, Robert Klein, Robert Klein is, when the punchline's coming, and it doesn't make any difference, but you can tell the wind-up and the pitch. You can tell it with him. You really can. And Carlin does it totally different. Carlin will repeat a punchline 3 times in a row, and Chris Rock does it too. Carlin will say something, and at the end he'll go, because they're all, whatever. They're all this. They're all that. Like 3 times.
Right.
He does.
Couldn't picture it until you said it that way, and it's like, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris Rock does it too.
Well,
and that's what makes it different. Jim Brewer's totally different. Chappelle's different than Chris Rock. Chappelle could stand still and create an energy in the room like he's pacing back and forth like Chris Rock does without moving. Stephen Wright reminds me a lot of Jackie Vernon.
And I was going to ask you that before. The way you were describing how he just stands still and he would talk. I remember seeing Stephen Wright when he started his career and thinking, I can't believe this is an act. And then the longer he goes and you're falling down laughing, it's like, oh my God. Yeah, but it's Jackie Vernon, Stephen Wright.
Yeah.
I am looking at the time and I'm thinking that we have probably gone about the length of the movie, and I should probably let you off the hook here.
Okay. Well, then why don't we do this again sometime? I'm open to do whatever you want.
I would love to. I would love to talk to you every week, but I will arrange, not every week, but I would love to do this again. You're a wonderful guy to talk to, and
great. Well, I had fun too. Yeah,
we've had our serious moments. I've had quite a good laugh at times, and Robert, I want to thank you again for coming back on the show.
But listen, life has serious moments too, but there's also a lighter side. You'll find that, look, I don't know how many ways that you could say it. When you're facing the Grim Reaper and they're asking if you want a wig, how can you not laugh? How much is the wig worth at that point? You got to think about a wig now, and this too, and this fight. I mean, it's just, to me, there's a joke there. I can't help it. That's just the way I am. Other people, well, obviously, there's lots of other people that go through that stuff, and you don't hear them doing the joke. I mean, I love Gene Wilder. I know he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had a book out about it. I don't remember him saying anything about dick wigs in there, but they do offer it. It's called a merkin, but they do have them.
Yeah, right.
So, it depends. Look, there are guys that Mort Saul could pick up the newspaper every day and go on stage and do a new act. Dennis Miller could probably do that. Larry Miller could probably do it. I couldn't. There's some guys who look at the paper and they go, there's nothing today. And there's somebody else that'll find 20 jokes in the same paper. Mm-hmm. It's you and how you perceive things. And the reason why I like doing this thing with you is because you've allowed me to express myself and talk about my story, which I think is important for people to hear as much, if not more so, than making them laugh, because the longer they're around, the longer I get to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of shows they joke. They call you ahead of time. What do you want me to lead you into? Yeah.
That's the movie. That's the movie.
Oh, I hear it, yeah.
You can hear it on that movie.
Yeah.
Because that's the TV. Because that song has flowers in it.
Yeah, I know.
It has bees in it. Everyone likes it.
I know, sweetie. Yeah, I really don't. I'll be done in a minute, okay, sweetie? Boy, I really didn't sound like the guy with the sex jokes there, did I?
No, you didn't. No.
This is my real life. He didn't even know he was going with me. I took my son that was sick on the road with me once, and against everybody's orders. And I said I wanted to take him away with me on a weekend. I took him to Denver, Colorado. And we had an unbelievable time. We really did. And, my wife was like, well, who's going to watch him when you're on stage? This kid's sick, and you're going to leave him alone. I said, you know what? He's going to have waitresses over him. Yeah. And the other comics are going to hang out with him. And my 4.5-year-old's begging to go with me on the road somewhere. So when I was going I told my wife I'll take him. I wanted to bring my 3-year-old too. Boy, am I glad I didn't, because we wouldn't have had this conversation. He wouldn't sit there for the B movie.
Different than your Megs.
Yeah, but I didn't want to tell him. And so when we got to the Burbank airport Wednesday night, he's like, gets out of the car to hug me goodbye. And he said, I'll see you on Monday, Daddy. I said, I know. You're going to see me tomorrow, too. And the next day, and he's like looking at me, and I said, you're going with me. And he almost flipped. And he went to press with me this morning. I was up at 5:30 this morning. He was in a car with me to go down to San Francisco, 40 minutes away from here. Did morning radio with me. He started at 5:30, got back 15 minutes before he called me. And, or I called you, and he's not giving me any problems. And you know what? I know people could say, you're working, you don't take your kids to work and stuff like that. I learned a big lesson in 2000. I know what I did wrong before about spending time with my kids and not. So, this is what I'm doing now because of what I went through, then I got something positive out of my experience. And, I'm not letting that happen again. Because, I don't want, I would like to say I don't have any regrets, but I wish I would have done more of that with my son Derek, and I didn't. But that ain't going to happen again. It's just not. And it's not that I'm not taking you that I don't respect you and what you do, that my kid would talk when we're on. I'm not going to tell him to shut up. I can't tell him to shut up. I won't do it. I would rather hang up than do that. Seriously. I would rather call. If you said, I can't hear you or this is distracting, then I'd say, you know what? Let's pick another day, and it'll be when he's not with me. But I can't change it today.
I'm delighted that your son was there. It reminded me the first time I took my daughter on an interview with me. Completely, most people thought afterwards that it was completely inappropriate. I took her to meet the head of the Hooters restaurant chain. I just happened to be interviewing him that day, and I didn't have anyone who could look after her. I think she was either homesick that day, and my wife was already at work. And I thought, well, I'll just take her along, and we didn't go to Hooters restaurants, but we went to the headquarters, and everybody was fawning over her. And he gave her a little bobblehead with Lynn Austin, the original Hooters girl, on it, and
wow.
It was pretty funny. But and he was real cool about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have lives. We have kids, and things happen. And I'm delighted that your son was there. I thought that was nothing personal, but the couple of minutes when he came to chat with you, that was some of the best airtime we had, Robert.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know what? I don't remember doing stuff like that with my dad. My dad's a real workaholic. I think the reason why is because he's a Holocaust survivor. He's working like all the time, get his mind off of what happened in his life. But me, I told you last time, if I'm out with my kids at the park or the beach or whatever, I don't have a cell phone with me. I don't believe in it. I really don't. And I know business is business. I try and take care of my business some other way. But I've been to the park and see mothers on a cell phone while their kid's on a swing set and they're not even looking at the kid. For my money, I would rather hire a babysitter that will play with the kid at the park instead of just getting them to, getting out of the car and then you're on the phone the whole time. I don't know what happened to us, but obviously us as a race, we've become very lonely because all you got to do is take a drive down the street and look at how many people are on the phone while they're walking, just talking. People can't walk from work to lunch without talking on the phone. Nobody can be alone? Is that it? What did they do before on cell phones? I don't remember people stopping at payphones every 5 minutes to call somebody.
No.
No, seriously.
I agree.
It's a weird thing. Oh, yeah. I was with my manager. We were at Century City Mall, and outside they have one of these places, the phone kiosk things, where they sell the accessories to the phone. So he's looking at something, and the guy goes, you have one of these little patches that goes on the back of the phone, and it prevents cancer. And I said, really? Because I had cancer 7 years ago. And he said, geez, I'm really sorry, but, I don't know how good these things really are. And I said, boy, what a bad salesman you are, seriously. I said, if I would have been you, I would have said, see, now if you would have had the patch, that wouldn't have happened. But no, you're apologizing for it.
Again, it's all in how you sell it.
It is. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna go actually take him outside for a walk.
All right.
I'm thinking before my 2 shows tonight.
Oh wow. Well, it was a pleasure, and I
no, me too.
We'll do it again.
No, absolutely. I'm telling you that I'll do it. Just you set it up with Lisa, and I'll do it.
Great. All right.
Okay. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, we can meet in person. I would love to do a live interview sometime.
Maybe we can figure that out sometime. That would be great.
So you're in where? Where in Florida?
I'm in St. Petersburg. Actually, I think you're coming to West Palm before too long.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that close to there?
Yeah, it's close enough. We could figure something out.
Okay. Well, then let's try and do that.
That would be great.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Right.
Then you can come to the show and see me live, too.
I would love that. Well, let me get to the part here where I say goodbye, because I'm going to plug the book, and I'll get in touch with Lisa, and we'll figure something out.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Robert. You take care of yourself.
You too.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so you can order Robert Schimmel's book, Cancer, on $5 a day at fine booksellers everywhere, as we say. And if you're interested in seeing Robert live, as I am, and apparently I'm going to do, check out his website, www.robertschimmel.com. It's robertschimmelsolid.com for upcoming tour dates. For dozens more celebrity and media newsmaker interviews, surf over to our main website, www.mrmedia.com. That's where you can listen to my conversations with Billy Bob Thornton, Cheryl Hines, Milo Ventimiglia, David Fury, Anna Gunn, Stephan Pastis. You can even hear the first part of this interview with Robert Schimmel. And you can also read full transcriptions of many interviews there. Also, if you're listening live, on April 7th, Monday, April 7th, 1 o'clock Eastern, you've got to check this out. I'm going to talk to John Provost and his wife. John was Timmy on the original Lassie in the 1960s. He's written a tremendous book. Got to catch that. And then April 8th, our rescheduled interview with Bill Prady, the co-creator of The Big Bang Theory on CBS. So some great stuff coming up. I hope you'll think about marking Mr. Media as a favorite and come back again next time. Thanks again for listening, everybody.